Very often, people find our congregation and they say to me something that both thrills me and drives me crazy. They say, I felt this way for years and now I've finally found you. And I say to myself, on one hand, it's great that you found us. On the other hand, what are we doing wrong? Why, we've been here. It's not like we popped up a year ago or 2 years ago. We've been around. In fact, as a movement, secular humanistic Judaism has been around for 50 plus years, not even recently. And in the Chicago area since 1969, in the Detroit area since 1964. So it goes back quite a long ways, and yet people are still finding us. But I'm also curious what their experience was like before they found us. When they had these beliefs, they had this sense of what being Jewish meant to them, but they asked the question, am I the only one who feels this way? Am I alone? Am I that strange? In fact, we had one person who found our congregation, and his wife, who was actively Catholic, was almost upset that he found the congregation, because at first she thought, well, it's just him. And then he found a whole community of people who felt the way he did and who wanted to live the way he did. And that was even more challenging, perhaps, to deal with. So I want to begin this discussion of a Judaism for the rest of us with a short scene from the movie Inherit the Wind, which, if you recall, discusses the trial of a teacher. In this case, the character's name is Bertram Cates. Originally, it was the Scopes trial, who dared to teach evolution in a biblical believing Tennessee town. And what you'll see in this film is a depiction of what it's like to be the lonely man of doubt, the person who doesn't agree with the consensus. And what are the temptations to simply pretend to believe or not rock the boat? And what are the rewards of standing up for one's belief? What I find particularly poignant about this scene is a description of what it feels like to be alone in one's belief. And then we will talk about the joy of finding others who feel the same way.
Bert, you've got to call the whole thing off now.
Who are you, young lady? This is Rachel Brown. We're engaged. Brown? Reverend Brown's daughter?
Don't you see what's happening, Bert? They're using you as a weapon against your own people. What you think or believe isn't the point anymore. You're helping something bad.
Oh, now, young lady, it's not as simple as all that. Good or bad, black or white, day or night. Do you know that at the top of the world, the twilight is 6 months long?
Bert and I don't live on top of the world. We live in Hillsboro. And when the sun goes down, it's dark. And why do you have to come here to make a difference?
I didn't come here to make Hillsboro different. I came here to defend his right to be different, and that's the point. How about it, boy? I don't know what the point is anymore. I tried to open the kids' minds. They're kids. I tried to give them knowledge they could use. They're using it. There's a stranglehold on me.
You're learning, Cates. Disillusionment is what little heroes are made of.
Where do I finish? Dead with a paper medal on my chest? Bert Cates, world's biggest chump. He died fighting. Well, let's face it. To him, I'm a headline. To you, I'm a cause. And to yourself? All right, let's face it. Now, you chose to get into this by yourself. You didn't get into it because of his headline or because of my cause or maybe even because of their kids. You got into it because of yourself, because of something you believed in for yourself. I didn't believe it would happen this way.
It can get worse. Those people are in a lean and hungry mood.
They look at me as if I was a murderer. In a way you are. You know, you kill one of their fairy tale notions and they'll bring down the wrath of God, Brady, and the state legislature on you every time.
You make a joke out of everything.
Young lady, I know what Bert is going through. It's the loneliest feeling in the world. It's like walking down an empty street listening to your own footsteps. But all you have to do is to knock on any door and say, if you'll let me in, I'll live the way you want me to live, and I'll think the way you want me to think. And all the blinds will go up and all the doors will open, and you'll never be lonely ever again. Now, it's up to you, Kate. You just say the word and we'll change the plea. And that is, of course, if you honestly believe that the law is right and you're wrong. Now, if that's the case, just tell me, and I'll pack my bag and go back to Chicago where it's a nice, cool 100 in the shade.
Bert, I've gone to my father's church every Sunday as long as I can remember. This is where I live. This is where my children will be born. What kind of a life could we have?
Well, what kind of life could we have if I gave up now? Your father's kind? Hallelujah, and ignorance, here we come? Rach, what goes on in this town is not necessarily the Christian religion every place else either. Rich, I can't live the way you want me to. You're the one who's got to decide. It's his church or our house. You can't live in both.
The loneliest feeling in the world. Substitute church for synagogue and rabbi for minister. And many people who find their way to our communities have had that kind of dialogue with their family, with parents. It's a not uncommon story. In many ways, Humanistic Judaism is a movement of immigrants because we have people coming from all different walks of the Jewish world. Let me share a few of those stories of the varieties of lonely, secularized, and cultural Jews, and maybe you'll hear your own story in one of these. One example is someone who grows up as a Reformed Jew. They're comfortable with that style of liberal religious faith. They go to college, they take classes in comparative religion and in philosophy and in physics and science, and at the end of 4 years, or even at the end of 2 years, they decide, you know what, I just don't believe all of this stuff. And I understand that when you say God, you mean spirit, and it could be the universe, but you're still talking to he, and you're still praising, and you're still pleading, and you're still thanking, and it just doesn't speak to me. I mean, maybe I made a mistake. I learned what the Hebrew means. Maybe if I didn't know, then it would be easier. But I know, and I can read the translation, and this just doesn't feel authentic to me. I want to be Jewish, but I don't want to be Jewish in a way that I just don't believe. Second story, someone's raised as a conservative Jew. And they may follow the typical conservative practice of having a kosher synagogue, but at home, if they want some bacon, maybe, or maybe they keep a kosher home, but eating out, well, maybe. It used to be some conservative Jews would look like they didn't drive to synagogue, except they would drive 3 blocks away, park the car, and then walk 3 blocks the rest of the way to synagogue. But they lived a life of more observance than their Reform neighbors. And then this young person maybe went to college, maybe got a job after college, and met a wonderful young person who just didn't happen to be Jewish. They're from a different cultural or religious background. They may well be a secular person and not even religiously involved in another tradition. And so this person decides to get married. And they go back to their family rabbi and realize, no, that's not going to work. And they talk to other conservative rabbis in the area. No. They ask, would our children be accepted in this community? And then it depends on which gender is the Jewish person. Would my birth announcements be listed in the congregational newsletter for the new grandparents? Again, it depends on the gender of the Jewish partner for a conservative congregation. At least it did 15, 20 years ago. Things have gotten a little better now. But the people who are members today went through this experience, not in the more enlightened days of the 2010s and the 2020s. And so maybe that experience of closed-mindedness, of rejection, pushed them away from a more conservative Jewish lifestyle and into a more secularized, universal, open-to-world culture experience. Some people were even raised Orthodox, and they decided that was not a life for them, too rigid, too conformist, too closed-minded. You know, it's ironic, we think of Judaism as a religion of asking questions, of open dialogue and debate. But if you talk to someone who was raised Orthodox, they laugh because, yes, they could ask questions about how high the Eruv wire has to be to define a Shabbat space. Yeah, you can argue about that. But who wrote the Bible and when? What archaeology has to say? How old is the earth? Are the rabbis always right? Those aren't questions you're allowed to ask. And so they leave that Orthodox, even ultra-Orthodox lifestyle. They sometimes call themselves off the derech, which means off the path. Many of you saw that wonderful Netflix series over the lockdown period, Unorthodox, about a young woman who feels the need to leave that community. And you may have seen a movie years ago called The Price Above Rubies, also describes this story. These are very gut-wrenching stories. These are people who are often cut off from their families. And yet, when they land in the secular world, sometimes they miss that feeling of community. They miss a sense of connecting to their heritage. They still feel that they're Jewish for any number of reasons, but they don't want to live a life of halakha, a life of Jewish law that tells them what to do and what not to do, what they can eat, and what they can wear, and whom they can love. Maybe some people find their way into our communities who were raised unaffiliated Jewish, just freelance, doing it on their own. They may never have had a bar or bat mitzvah. They may never have joined a synagogue community, but they did Passover Seders and Hanukkah candles. Or maybe they were raised in a multi-heritage household where one parent was Jewish and one parent was from a different background. And so they did home holidays like Hanukkah and Christmas. But for them, Christmas was the tree, not the nativity scene. And Easter was chocolate and bunnies and not the passion story and the resurrection. And similar for Jewish culture too. But now when they're choosing their own families or simply looking for themselves, they decide, you know what, I want to find more people like me. And I want to find a way to be Jewish that feels more comfortable for my cultural Jewish experience. And not that I have to put on religious airs or clothing to feel like I'm connected to my broader family. Some people in our communities were raised with a very ethnic Jewish experience, not particularly religious at all. It could have been on a kibbutz in Israel. It could have been in the former Soviet Union, where they knew they were Jewish by persecution, if nothing else, and they knew they were not Christian. When they came to America, they may not have integrated to the broader synagogue community because their experience was that being Jewish was simply who they were and who their family was. And if they had a Christmas tree, they had a Christmas tree. It didn't matter. But they were connected to the Jewish people. And now they're looking to learn more, to explore more, and again, to connect. We even have some members in our community who didn't know they were Jewish for most of their lives. They discovered it later in life. Maybe it was a DNA test. Maybe it was a revelation at the end of life of one of their parents. It could have been a discovery in the attic, going through old papers. And they're curious to find out, what does this mean? And what is this part of myself? And do I have a connection to this? And do I find this meaningful? And we also have people who've decided to join the Jewish family, who have no biological connection to us, but find a real affinity for Jewish music and Jewish food and Jewish history and Jewish holidays and Jewish values. And so they join the Jewish family. You can call it adoption or conversion, and they feel connected to us. But maybe they convert religiously and then realize they don't believe all that stuff. Or they never believe that stuff, but still feel that cultural affinity. And are our doors open enough to let them in and to join? And we even have people, like myself, who were raised in a secular or humanistic Jewish community. Could have been part of the Jewish labor left, the Workmen's Circle, the Shalom Aleichem Institute schools. My mother went to a Shalom Aleichem Institute school, for example. It could have been part of the Congress of Secular Jewish Organizations, which was the name of the organization at the time through the 70s, in the 70s through the 2010s. Or it could have been an affiliate of the Society for Humanistic Judaism, as I mentioned, founded in 1969 and sponsoring communities in most major cities. And so for those of us raised in the movement, we knew we weren't alone, and yet we felt somewhat alone. But there weren't always a lot of us around, and depending on where we landed geographically, maybe there weren't others. You know, if you were raised in Chicago but landed in St. Louis, there weren't any humanistic Jewish options for you there, even if there were in Chicago. Or if you grew up at Beth Or in Deerfield and then wound up living on the south side of Chicago, were you really going to come all the way up to find community again? Well, that has its challenges too. In some ways, the birth of the online Jewish world has been a boon to humanistic Judaism, both for people searching and finding us. We're only a Google search away now, and also for creating community, whether it's through new initiatives like secularsynagogue.com, which is one of the projects of our guest speaker in a couple of weeks, Rabbi Denise Larsky, or online humanistic Judaism discussion groups on Facebook, or simply staying connected to your community. And obviously during the COVID shutdowns, all of our services are online, and we've had former members of the congregation from Mexico and Florida and Arizona who've connected to our services and maintained that connection even today. You see, our lesson is, with all of those people out there, from all of those experiences, there are a lot of us. We're not so unusual anymore. In 2013, the Pew Forum on Religion and American Life did a survey of Jewish Americans. It's called A Portrait of Jewish Americans. And I think they're working on a 2020 version of it. I'm really fascinated to see where those numbers land. But in 2013, they asked some very interesting questions. For example, they asked people, is being Jewish mainly a matter of ancestry, mainly a matter of culture, or mainly a matter of religion, or a mix of all of those? The strong majority of all Jews said that being Jewish is mainly a matter of ancestry or culture. Over 60%, and 63% said it was mainly ancestry and culture. And then another 15 or so percent said it was religion and ancestry and culture. Only about 15, 20% said it was mainly about religion. They asked people, can you be Jewish and not believe in God? Fully 65% said, sure, no problem. You can be Jewish and not believe in God. They asked, how do you identify as Jewish? Are you Jewish by religion, or are you not religious but Jewish in some other way? 25% of American Jews said they were what Pew calls Jews of no religion. They're not religious, but they identify as Jewish in some other way. And if you asked millennials, a third of them, 33%, said they were Jewish but not religious. So we are not this weird oddball circumstance anymore. There are lots of us out there. Again, remember, 25% of the American Jewish community, if we're 6 million Jews, is 1.5 million people. So you could say that we're still doing a terrible job of market penetration if we have that many people, and our congregations are substantial, but nowhere near that many people. But in the end, what we find is it's better to be together than to be alone. And that's why we're thrilled when people find our community and find a meaningful community in our community. For us, as a broader movement, we call ourselves secular humanistic Judaism. Each of those terms has a particular meaning to us. Secular could be in the sense of this worldly, focused on this life. It could be in a sense of independent and freedom, so you're not required by religious law to do things, in the Israeli sense of the term chiloni, which means sort of free to do religion as you choose. We are secular in terms of not imposing authority from beyond. And as a humanistic rabbi, I can offer suggestions, but I'm not in the commandment business. Humanistic means our positive focus on this world, on this life, and on human needs and responsibility. There's that famous phrase, man is the measure of all things, and we broaden it to people, of course. But if people is the measure, that means if a rule is considered to be ethical or not, that's a function of whether it benefits or harms people and the world in which we live. If we want to decide on what we are free to do ourselves, we think about the impact of that behavior on society and on other individuals whom we care about. So humanistic means we focus on what people can know and what people can do. That's the positive, uplifting side of this. Too much of religion tells you what you can't know, what you can't do, how much help you need. And our approach is to admit when we can't solve the problem, but also to draw on the strength we do have individually and together to address the needs of human beings. People sometimes ask us, if you don't pray, what do you do? My answer is, we do. We don't just hope and wish, we act to see the change we want to happen in the world. And finally, we are a branch of Judaism. For us, Judaism means connecting to the Jewish family and culture. It could mean Jewish history, Jewish literature, Jewish food, Jewish jokes, Jewish heirlooms, Jewish art, Jewish music, and Jewish holidays and life cycle events, what's conventionally understood as religion. But we see Judaism as broader than simply religious beliefs or ideas or ritual practices. After all, most American Jews don't keep kosher, don't recite prayers and blessings multiple times a day, don't believe all the things they were told to believe. They identify with Judaism as a cultural identity. And so why not build that at the center of your sense of community and your sense of personal identity? So that's us in a nutshell. That's a humanistic Jewish community, the kind of people that find their way to us, and the reasons why we connect to each other.
I guess what occurs to me is, even though, we in theory philosophically represent a significant part of the community, the people who are secular also, I think, I'm guessing, it was a question, do you think it's because we're a synagogue right? Where we're still have the trappings of all of the religious sort of versions of Judaism. How do you think that plays with respect to how people approach us or fail to approach us?
It's an excellent point. You know, where in the phone book do you want to be listed? Because if you're listed as Jewish Cultural Communal Organization, there's going to be one listing, and no one's going to know to find you there. I mean, this is in the days of the phone book. You know, you'll have to imagine that long ago time when we used phone books to find things. But the other challenge is exactly what you said. We once had an article appear about our congregation in the Chicago Tribune's religion section. And I had someone call us who said, you know, I really like what you stand for, but I don't like organized religion. And I said to her, well, we're not that organized. But secondly, if only all the people who didn't like organized religion would actually join something, then they could have a much more powerful impact on society and in the dialogue, and having someone to represent their viewpoint in the Jewish community. But you're right, it is a hurdle. And some people who have had negative synagogue experiences are almost triggered by a rabbi, a synagogue, you know, that sort of pushes them the wrong way. Even if they actually came in and saw what we did, they might have a very positive response to it. So this is one of our challenges in terms of how do we appeal to people. One of our new slogans, which you can see on the poster David has up behind him in his virtual background, is doing Jewish differently. And we like that slogan both because it's focused on doing Jewish, which doesn't require you to be Jewish. You know, you can spin a dreidel no matter what your identity is, even if it's part Jewish or not Jewish at all, married to someone Jewish. But also the fact that we're doing it differently, you know, to key people in that this is not your grandparents' traditional synagogue that's going to reject you for your partner or for your lifestyle or for your beliefs and values. So hopefully that helps to bridge the gap a bit. But you're right, there's always going to be that challenge. And there's always going to be people who just aren't comfortable with how we do it. And look, I'll be honest, we could do things more secular. I could take off my tie. You know, part of the ethos of the kibbutz movement was no one ever wears a tie. That's part of the egalitarian side of it. That was part of their secularism, was none of that formality and hierarchy and structure and so on. So we could be more radically secular in some ways. But at the same time, there are people who evolved out of those religious communities who don't mind having a rabbi whom they understand not as a legal authority, but as someone who is a guide in life, who's a counselor, who gives you good advice, who's an expert in Jewish life, who can, you know, help you in personal matters and create beautiful ceremonies. I'm not telling you how to live your life in a commandment mitzvot kind of way, but for some people, that's exactly what they want, is someone in that capacity, even if for other people it sets them off because of the clergy hierarchy associations with it. So I don't think it's a solvable problem. Like, you can't cut the baby in half and have both at the same time. Hopefully people sort of get over that hump. And we do have some members, a couple of whom were raised in that secular Jewish world, not in humanistic Judaism, but in the even more radically secular Jewish world, who said, I never imagined I would ever join a synagogue. You know, this is ironically the synagogue for those who thought they would never ever join a congregation.